Hi, I'm Daria Burke, Chief Marketing Officer at JustFab, welcoming you back to Leading with Style. We developed this series to celebrate and to amplify the voices of women we admire, to create space to talk about culture, life, leadership, and of course, fashion. And there is no better person with whom to kick off this new year than Cleo Wade, poet, artist, author, community builder, and mama to Memphis love. Cleo has fondly been referred to as your wisest BFF, and she is the epitome of effortlessly stylish. She's someone who I personally admire and am so inspired by, and am really grateful that we are working together. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here with
Me
you.
too. So Time Magazine called you the poet of your generation, and Fast Company has ranked you one of the 100 most creative people in business. And you're like 31. So I would love.
I'm 32.
You're 32. Give you your extra year. I don't want to take it away. But I mean, with that is incredible. And so I would love to start with a tour of your journey to becoming a poet, a writer, an author.
Well, I went to poetry summer camp when I was a little girl, and everyone's always like, where is their poetry summer camp? But I grew up in New Orleans, which is just such a deeply expressive culture, and it's so filled with the arts, and my dad's an artist and my mom's a cook, and I really grew up around people making things. And so I think that early on in my journey I was really influenced by this idea that your life is what you make, and whether that's gumbo or whether that's a poem on a piece of paper. And so I am not that good at cooking, so I chose poetry. And then I am someone, I think that what drives me as much as my desire to be creative is just my work ethic. I've always been someone who is a worker. I got a job when I was 12 working at a clothing store, and they had to pay me under the table. It was a clothing store in the French Quarter, but I just always wanted to be around people and understand what they liked and what they loved. And it was even in that moment where I saw the value of fashion, because I saw that it could change the way a person's day felt. I knew that from working retail, and I worked in retail from when I was 12 until I graduated from high school. And I think that seeing the way that clothes just could change someone's day. And I knew even from myself, when I was growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money, so for me, fashion was a way of going to the thrift store and making it work and pulling all these things together. And so I have such a value for A, things that aren't super expensive, and then B, this idea that it can be a part of your personality or a way that you feel more confident, because you chose it. And I moved to New York when I was 17, and I worked for a few different companies, and I interned, and I was an office manager. I mean, I've had like every job you can imagine. I mean, there was a point in time in high school where I think I was like selling t-shirts with crawfish on them in New Orleans. And but there was this voice in the back of my head that was like, why aren't you writing? Why aren't you writing? And I think I was afraid of what I had to say. And I think that building, these kind of communities around me that helped me cultivate my bravery, helped me to understand that everyone needs that. Whether that is built through online platforms or whether that's built, in one of my booths in a public park where I just sit and listen to people. And I've always been so grateful to the group of girlfriends in my life that helped me to find my bravery and then allow my bravery to fuel my voice. And then they were also the people that helped me trust myself as I put it into the world. And that was so huge for me. And I always remember thinking, gosh, everyone needs somebody like that. And then I wondered, could I be that person for other people? And then that's pretty much what I try to do every day, whether it's through books or through, spreading messages, through making boxes of shoes or whatever it may be. Ultimately it's about, helping people to find a sense of ease and a sense of calm and in their lives.
And I think that really dovetails to my next question, because I've heard you say no one tells you what to do when your girlhood dreams bump into your womanhood dreams. And that's so true. And I think you're right. We often start with this imagination and this desire to create whatever it may be, and then we meet the practicality of adulthood. And having to navigate the tension between the two. And I'm curious, what advice would you give women who are trying to reconcile their girlhood and their womanhood dreams right now?
So what's interesting about that is that I actually feel the opposite. So I feel that our girlhood dreams are often these things that are like, what comes naturally to you? And then what do your teachers say you should do with it? And what do your parents say you should do with it? And I actually think that our childhood gets covered in practicality. And that's why we make those scary decisions of like, going to law school if we don't want to be a lawyer, or thinking we need to be a doctor or we can't be successful, or thinking that, you know, there's no possible way that it's practical or, you know, an option for us to become a poet or an artist or a musician or whatever it is. And so I think that we end up kind of doing the things that people say we should do with some natural skills or talents we may have. So, you know, I always think about, you know, like why, when I first started working or moving to New York, I was like, everyone was like, you should work in fashion, because I expressed myself through clothes, or I, you know, enjoyed it and I liked it, but that was certainly not really my actual gift in the end. And I'm glad that I get to kind of move in those communities, but I wasn't like great at it, you know, and, but I think that it was something that I, you know, could do. And someone was like, that feels like the right option for you in that way. But in my heart, you know, the dream of my whole life was to write poetry, but I kind of needed to get older and I think have a little bit of the wisdom of experience that says that, like, you know, that voice, you know, that whispering that's getting louder is actually telling you that, like, your life belongs to you. And only a woman can really claim her life and her journey. And so that's when I was like, oh, that's my womanhood dream. That's my whole big life dream. Not, you know, I don't know if I was invested in my dreams before, or the dreams that other people had for me. And then but I knew that when I went to sleep at night, what I was doing when I wasn't, you know, writing poetry, I was like, well, when I hear that voice, it doesn't sound like my voice. So that says you should get up in the morning and do this tomorrow. And then I was like, but I do think my voice is in there somewhere. And so when I started listening for that voice, I was like, oh, that's the woman I am. Mm-hmm. And I think everything else was kind of this, like, this could work or that could work, or my teacher said this, or my parents said this, or someone once said this about me, and maybe I should be that. But your womanhood dream is like, there's no maybes, you know? My womanhood dream was kind of like, you know, I always say that there's no such thing as a hell maybe. It's either like a hell yes or a hell no.
I say that all the time, and I was thinking that as you were saying that. I think that's right. It's a hell yes or it's a no. So many women find comfort in your poetry and actually often use them as affirmations. Do you have a current favorite that you're living by right now or reciting to yourself more often than not?
One that I use very often is, if you are grateful for where you are, you have to respect the road that got you there. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things that most people struggle with is self-forgiveness. It's really hard to forgive ourselves for who we were 2 minutes ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. When I think about what I thought or how I behaved, or what, even like how I moved through the world in ways that made me feel safe by being maybe like hard or not vulnerable, you know, I just feel mortified, mm-hmm. right? I just feel like, oh, or the things I thought before I understood the ways that our world worked, or the importance of being involved, you know, in our communities more deeply, or, you know, just how easy it is to make another person feel secure. But when you walk around feeling really insecure and really like, you know, you don't really know how to love or like yourself, it's hard to just kind of have that pour out of you when you move around other people. And so I think that when I think of, you know, struggling with, like, you know, 20-year-old me, I'm like, but I do remember that, you know, those, you know, that those kind of scars on your soul, they really do help you, you know, they really remind you to stick to the path you're on now, because, like, you know how the other side feels, and it doesn't feel great. And so I'm always like, you know, you don't have to like who you used to be, but you have to respect who you used to be. And with that respect, I think, comes love. And when we can love all the versions of ourselves that we were before, then woo, I mean, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and I think being able to, in self-forgiveness, say, I can't be mad at myself for what I didn't know at that time.
mean, Malcolm X talks
right,
about
letting
that.
yourself off the hook because you didn't know.
He would always say that, don't judge anyone for what they don't know, because there was a time where you didn't know what you know.
That's right.
And I think even having that type of patience and understanding for people on their journey to becoming more and more awake. I always joke with people like who are politically active or like woke. I'm always like, okay, but what'd you think in your pre-woke period? Like, and when was your pre-woke period? Like, I want to know that person. And I always like to remind people of that person so that they are not judgmental of the people who might be in that space now or kind of in this awakening of, and I don't care how long it took you to get there, but getting there is the important part.
That's right. And before COVID, you were traveling. You were too. We all were. Oh my gosh, I miss it. But you were doing something really amazing. You were doing book tours, and you were hosting an Are You Okay booth.
Yes.
And being able to create that safe space for people to share their feelings, to build community. Why has that idea of community building been so important to you?
I did my first Are You Okay booth right before the 2016 election. I've done about 2 a year since then, and it is, I had this feeling that people's anxiety was at an all-time high, and this idea that it was really hard for us to relate to each other was at an all-time high, and also people just felt really alone.
Yeah.
And you just moved to a new city. It's hard to meet people, and I think that what I really noticed with so many people is that when you go through all these different points in your life where you've either moved and you're wondering how you make friends as an adult, or you're leaving college and still kind of friends with your college friends, but you kind of feel like they're friends with who you used to be, and you kind of want to go and be on this whole thing, or you just got divorced and all your other friends were kind of you knew through your spouse, or you just got married and your other friends don't know how to relate to your there's so many times in our life where we're kind of like the frame that had been held up for us in a friendship space is off.
Right.
And I realized that people needed places to meet people, and so after I did my Are You Okay booth the first time, I realized that there was such a long line the whole time because I don't put a limit on people, and I never tell anyone to leave, and people are usually really respectful and don't take 2 hours because they know that there's so many people there. But so what we started doing in the last one that I did in LA is that we put picnic blankets all over the park, and so people would sit and meet people, and there were so many people that made friends in the line and on the tour, and I mean, and on my tours too, we have women's groups that form all over the country, and so it really then became just a space where I listen to people, but people meet each other and listen to each other too, and it's so beautiful. I miss it.
You've outlined a number of ways that people may be missing communities that they were a part of, and I think this year is especially challenging for a lot of folks. And so what would you say to anyone who's feeling particularly lonely or missing their community this time of year especially?
I would say reach out to them. I think a lot of the times we think that we think people don't need us or are okay or are too busy, or if they haven't called, then it's because they don't need someone to call, or if they haven't called, then you should be okay too. If they're fine, why aren't you fine? And I think that people really want to be connected during this time. I don't think anybody wants to be holed up and completely isolated. So make yourself heard, reach out to your friends, get connected if you want to stay connected, and just I remember once I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, yeah, they asked me about someone, and I was like, yeah, we've just been so disconnected lately, and they just merely said to me, get connected. What's the big deal?
Right.
Get connected. And I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
Just get connected. It is that simple.
I think so too. I think that it sometimes feels hard to be vulnerable and to reach out and to say, hey, I want to reconnect. And I think, making that space for ourselves, right? It's empathy for yourself to say, it's okay. You can do it. You can make the call. So you had your daughter, Memphis Lovekinberg, last year. How has being a mom changed your perspective and your art?
I don't even know yet. When you're I feel so in it, and I think that because, I've been home with her every single day. I think that I really am so focused and concentrated on soaking in the experience of her that I don't think I've like been able to remove myself enough to kind of understand how it's influencing me yet. I will say that some things I've noticed about, motherhood or reflected on is a lot, John Lewis used to always say that when they, part of being in the civil rights movement with the nonviolent protesters is that they would practice nonviolence, right? So, you would go to a training and, they would say like, okay, if you're in a bad mood, they'd push you around, they'd do whatever. And they'd say like, listen, like you're actually not in a nonviolent place to come to this protest, like stay home, whatever. And so he would have all these different mental tricks to stay in this nonviolent headspace. And one of his was that he would, if someone was, spitting on him, cursing at him, beating him, he would picture them as a baby. And he would say that, when I pictured them as a baby, I'd wonder like what went wrong, because these babies are so innocent and they're so loving and they're so curious. He's like, did the environment go wrong? What happened? And I would never give up on that little baby, so I'm not going to give up on this person. And it is true, to see that in real time, just how curious and non-judgmental babies are. And my daughter is just really a ball of love and freedom, and she wonders about everyone. She doesn't try to like other anyone, and she's if you like came to her right now, she'd just be calling and trying to like pull on your face, and so I do think that it is really deeply instilled that idea from John Lewis, which is that I do that now. I like try to picture people as babies, like in this time where our country is so divided and things are so hard, and so many of us are getting out of the holiday season, and so we're around all like maybe around our extended family or on the family Zooms, and it's interesting because I have started to be like, I imagine them as like a baby, like being able to play with Memphis, and like, or I think like, what would Memphis think or do, and she would just wonder about something. She wouldn't try to categorize it or fix it or control it or whatever. She has no idea what the first year of her life was like, and or the world that she lived in, and that's awe-inspiring.
Yeah, just evaluate and wonder without judgment.
Yeah, or like, I need to put it in this box or do this, or I need to decide that it's right or wrong, and instead it's having that type of curiosity really helps us, I think, heal.
Yeah, I think so. And one of my beliefs, thinking about it as a leader, is that, leadership isn't necessarily about being in charge or leading by authority, right? There are so many different ways of leading. And I think a lot of it is about having the courage to go first. And you've famously penned "Real Leaders Lead with Love," which is such a powerful concept, and it resonates really deeply with me. And I'm curious, what do you think loving leadership looks like? And with that, how do you protect your own energy at the same time and make sure that you are nurturing yourself?
It's really funny because people often think of love as just this soft, kind of docile, like only sweet emotion. And love is really like a badass, actually. And Dr. King said that love is the most durable power in the world. And he meant durable as in like it lasts through anything. Think of even a religious person's like love of whatever it is they worship. The religions go through literal hell and back, and that type of love to a connective force still exists. Think about how much the concept of why people should be in relationships or not, or the love of a mother and a child, or all these things, like love just like no matter what happens, like the apocalypse could happen tomorrow and love would still be here. And so I really look at it as like, what does it look like to take that durable force that can endure so much, that can hold so much, and then what does it look like to hold your teams with that, and to be like, I'm leading you with love, and love pushes, love wants to see the best of you. Love wants you to be in your light and in your potential. Love wants joy for you. Love wants your whole self to be, responsibly in the workplace. Love really does, want the environment to be safe, right? Love really does want, people to feel comfortable, people to feel like they can speak up, people to feel that they can have a moonshot, and if it doesn't work out, they have a soft landing place. That love believes that learning curves don't have to be sharp edges.
Right.
And I think that when we raise our kids with that type of leadership, and we raise and reparent ourselves with that type of leadership, and raise our companies in that type of leadership, people get to go the places they want to go in their careers or on their path, and they get to do it feeling good about themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important, because if you cross the finish line but you didn't get to cross it with your soul, you're going to wonder why you crossed it in the first place. That's or right. Why you even cared.
That's right. We talk a lot, especially lately, about diminishing versus multiplying, right? And diminishing leadership versus that which really does multiply, and it creates and expands, and it does unlock that limitless potential. And I think so much about hopefully being an expander and a multiplier for my teams, but just for people around the world. So I love that idea, and I love that we can reframe love with the power that it really has, right?
Yeah.
And it's soft and firm at the same time.
And it's like the one thing we all want. If you ask a million people, like, what was the one thing they wanted, or the top 3 things they want out of life, I don't think a single one of those lists would not have love on it. So then the next question is, why wouldn't that exist in the workplace? Right. Because it's so much more than something that's just romantic. It's something that holds us tight and up.
I think now more than ever, bring your full selves to work.
Yeah,
and so you have to make space for the whole person, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, I think loving them is the right way to do that. Okay, so let's talk about something we both have a lot of love for, which is fashion.
Yes.
You have partnered with so many incredible designers and spent time working with some really amazing brands in your career. What do you love most about fashion? And, how does that play out in your fashion choices?
I mean, for me, it does bring me back to my childhood, which is that the first place I understood how to express myself was through fashion, because I didn't, even when you're a little girl and you're writing, I wrote poems, but I wrote poems in my journal or my diary, so it felt really inward, and really for me, it didn't feel that it was something where I expressed it to others. But, if I was in a kooky mood, or if I was just like, I'm different, or this is like what I feel today, I could do that with like mix matching some, plaid skirt from the thrift store with like my mom's old t-shirt, with like my brother's old shoes, or whatever it might be. And so I think that for me, this idea that fashion is a part of, building your mood and also expressing your mood is just how I grew up. And so it's been so amazing, because, when I was a little girl, I was like, I think I want to work in fashion one day. And it's cool because I get to have that dream, even though it's, I get to have it, but I get to do it by being a writer and doing, what I feel I'm meant to do in the world. I didn't feel like it's cool that I didn't have to completely betray this, what my little girl stuff, like, just loves to just still dress up, or like, even now today, if something gets like sent to my house, or if I like order something, the second it comes in, I just rip open the box and have to put it on the mirror. I will stop the entire day if like a delivery comes from like wherever, like even when my collection came in to my house for the first time, I was like, stop everything. I like whipped through the book, and it's like, we like laid out all the shoes, and I tried them on, and I like put on different pants, and but it's because I'm also so grateful. I know what it's like to not, be able to shop, or and I'm so grateful to like be able to have these beautiful things in my life that I can express myself with and wear, and just enjoy myself. And it is such an experience of joy for me, fashion. And so it's emotional for me, it is.
Yeah, and your curated collection for JustFab is very aptly titled With Love, to serve as an invitation for women to choose love with every step that they take. And I think that is so much of what we would love to inspire, right? I think the fact that you are a poet and a writer and an artist, and we get to explore fashion as well, and with a message. And so with love, with this collection, What would you want to say to these women as they're sort of moving through the world?
When I was picking the shoes for this collection, I just kept thinking to myself, like, oh, the world feels so chaotic. I just want a decision. I just want to make one decision easier for a woman. If I can just help make one single decision a little bit easier, like that's all I'd want to do for anyone, because I would love it if someone would do that for me, which is that like, this shoe is simple, it's chic, and I can just put it on and it makes me feel good, but in a way where like I barely have to think about it, you know, like I didn't have to like, it is I think when I went through the list, I was like, if it doesn't feel like a go-to, it's not right for this collection, because I think that simplifying our lives, especially in the new year, is a way of giving our self-care. And I think that self-care is, you know, the language of self-love. And so to me, this collection, it's, you know, it's called With Love, but for me, self-care is a manifestation of self-love. And this is really like a self-care collection to me, because it's like, oh, okay, like I don't have to think about maybe another shoe for like the rest of I can put this shoe on and I don't have to think about another shoe for the rest of the week. I could keep this shoe by my door, and no matter what's going on in my house, if I have to like run out because I forgot something at the grocery store or whatever it may be, or you know, a friend of mine stopped by and we can do a social distance walk, I can just slide it on and it's comfortable and I can be out of the house. I just wanted to make women's lives easier with this collection, and that was really the kind of premise of everything I chose. And even when we were picking out the clothes for the shoot, I was like, everything should just be jeans and a t-shirt. Like it should be the easiest thing you wear or you do, because we want that ease, right? Things are so difficult and they're so complicated, and you want a good mood shoe and you just want easy shoes, you know? And to me, I think that actually just felt so helpful to women during this time.
Yeah. Tell me about the good mood shoe. You know, if you were to choose one pair from your collection to instantly lift your mood, which pair would you choose?
I think it would be the leopard sneaker. You just like smile when you see it. Like, I don't know, you feel kind of, I mean, I think that there's also something very like nostalgic about a slide-in shoe too. It kind of makes you feel like you're a kid, and it's just so easy, and I think it looks good with basically any type of bottom too. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, there was something about it. And it's also, I loved it because the pattern is printed on a suede, so it just feels like it's printed on like a really durable material. It feels also like, I love a shoe where it can get dirty but no one will ever see it. And so I'm like the queen of like, it's got to be like a black shoe or have a black sole too in the shoe. Like that's also really important for me. And so I don't know, I just like, every time I saw it on the line sheet, I was like, this shoe just makes me smile. Like most of what I chose is kind of neutral colors or like black or white or, you know, but I don't know, there was something that I was like, I'm putting this leopard in here. It just like makes me smile.
Yeah, no, it does. I think we all need those little mood boosters, whatever they might be.
And your kids like it. Like, I just think that, you know, it's funny because I'm at the point where I'm like, my daughter actually like sees and like is drawn to things. And it's like, if you're wearing like a sock in a fun pattern or something, she's like crawling after your feet. And so it's cool because it's like, you want to be like a fun mom. I don't know. You're like, I'm a cool mom. I'm like, I'm definitely not a cool mom, but I will say that I could be a fun mom.
I think you are a cool and fun mom for sure. In honor of our partnership, a donation has been made to the Lower East Side Girls Club. Can you tell me a little bit about this organization and why it's so close to your heart?
So the Lower East Side Girls Club is an organization that I'm on the board of, and I've worked with for so long. It actually, when I lived in New York, we're sad, we're both ex-New Yorkers, but it was 2 blocks from my apartment in New York. And one of the things I always say to people is that if you're wondering where to start in the world, you know, start in your neighborhood. And so it's interesting, like the 2 organizations that I'm on the board of, both of them are 2 blocks from my house, and in my house in New York. And so the Girls Club is open all year round, and it is a safe space for young girls, predominantly girls of color, who are from low-income backgrounds or are and even in displaced housing, and it's where they can go after school every day and have, they have 2 meals that are all vegetarian. They learn how to cook. They have a freaking planetarium in there. They learn about space and STEM, and they have a garden on the rooftop, and they learn how to plant food. And this year I'm really excited because we're opening a health and happiness center for the entire neighborhood. And so the donation from JustFab has been so important for helping us to get this center open, because we're going to be serving an entire neighborhood in New York of just teaching people the skills, whether it's just learning how to meditate or find calm, or eat the right foods, that we don't have to live with disease that's caused from food insecurities in our neighborhoods, or not having access to healthy foods. And so it's just amazing. And the girls at the Girls Club are so, I'm on nothing but group chats with them, and they just nothing keeps you more honest than being on group chats with teenage girls, as you know from your niece.
Indeed.
It's you're oh, okay. You'll be working around to saying something oh, I'm sure that person's just going through a hard time. And they're she's fake. And you're okay.
Or that.
I guess it's that. And I guess that's just the most blunt, honest way to say it. And you're wow, as you're an adult, you just learn to work through all this therapized language around how we talk about things, and they're so cut and dry, and it's amazing. And so the Girls Club is the most special place. You have to go next time you're in New York.
I absolutely will. Maybe we can try to go together if we're able to travel and go at the same time. I would love that.
But yes, it's amazing, and we're getting some shoes to the girls
yes,
as well.
I know,
which is so great. And it's so helpful because when winter comes in New York, it's so taxing on the parents to have to find, especially when the girls, their feet grow so quickly when they're teens, and so to help get winter shoes is so critical. So
well, it's our honor and our pleasure, and thank you for bringing them to us.
Yes.
Before we wrap up today, we always end our Leading with Style interviews with the same question: what is the best advice a woman you admire has given to you?
I'll say my friend Jenna once said to me, I remember I just got out of a relationship, and she said, and I was I just have to figure out what I want or what I'm interested in, out of a relationship next. And she was it's really simple. She goes, just find your happiest single self and then be that in a relationship. And I remember thinking, okay, first of all, wow, that's amazing advice, because even I remember when I met, my partner, I was just my happiest single self, and even in the relationship I was oh yeah, I want to just honor that person, my happiest solo, the person I just am without anybody else in the world. That happiest person can belong in a relationship. And then I was but then where else does she belong, right? So I always think that, find your happiest self, and then be that person in every room you walk into, be it in your romantic relationships, be it in your work relationships, be it in your friendships. Who is that most loved, cared for, happiest, when you have cultivated all the best that's in you, go be her in a room somewhere.
Everywhere, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's so good. That is so good. Thank you so much for being here with
It's
us.
So nice.
I can't wait for women everywhere to get to see and to shop your collection.
Me too.
And I really hope that we can enter into this new year with more love for ourselves and for each other.
Oh, me too.
So we'll put it out there.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We will be back in February with another amazing woman who is leading with style.